Abraham rose slowly from his heavy oak desk. He ran his calloused fingers over the edges of a map of the Union, feeling the invisible vibrations of a nation still trembling from the echoes of cannons. The gaslight in the corner of the room flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to dance with a life of their own. Abraham did not flinch. He watched the shadows, recognizing them as old friends who had whispered secrets to him in the dead of night since his youth in the wilderness. He walked toward the wash basin in the corner of the office. Abraham poured the cool water into the porcelain bowl, the sound of the splashing liquid filling the unnatural silence of the White House. He dipped his hands into the water, scrubbing them with a methodical, ritualistic precision. He wasn't just washing away the ink of 1,000 signed orders. He was preparing his spirit for a transition he had foreseen in the silver depths of his dreams. He dried his hands on a linen towel, looking at his palms as if reading a script written in the creases of his skin. Abraham turned and approached the great mirror that stood against the far wall. He stood perfectly still. He looked into his own eyes, dark, deep pools that held the sorrow of 1,000,000 souls. He remembered the vision from 1860, the two faces in the glass. Today, the ghostly version of himself was no longer a frightening specter. It was a beckoning light. Abraham leaned forward and touched the glass. He felt a faint hum, a frequency that vibrated at the very base of his spine. He realized then that he was not a man dying. He was a bridge being completed. He left the room and walked down the long carpeted hallway. His footsteps were heavy yet purposeful, the sound echoing through the corridors like the rhythmic ticking of a cosmic clock. As he passed the red room, Abraham paused. He did not turn his head, but he felt the presence of his son, Willie, standing just beyond the veil. He felt a warmth on his shoulder, a spectral hand giving him the strength to finish the task. Abraham nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of the sacrifice already made, and continued toward the grand staircase. Outside, the carriage was waiting. Abraham stepped out into the crisp evening air. He looked up at the moon, which hung over Washington, D.C. like a watchful eye. He felt the weight of the silver pocket watch in his vest, its ticking synchronized with the heartbeat of the Republic. He climbed into the carriage and sat in the darkness. He pulled a small, leather-bound notebook from his pocket and scribbled a single sentence. "The temple is built, and the cornerstone must now be sealed." He closed the book and tucked it away. His face settled into a luminous, otherworldly peace. When the carriage arrived at Ford's Theater, Abraham stepped out into the crowd. He did not see the people as mere spectators. He saw them as the future inhabitants of the reality he was about to solidify. He walked through the lobby, his tall frame cutting through the air like the prow of a ship. Every person he passed felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of calm, as if the Great Emancipator was radiating a shield of protection over them. Abraham reached the presidential box. He sat in the rocking chair, his body relaxing into the wood. He looked down at the stage, but his mind was elsewhere. He saw the phantom ship again. It was no longer far away. It was docked right there, in the middle of the theater, its masts reaching up toward the heavens. He felt the presence of the contract reaching its final clause. Behind him, the door creaked. Abraham did not turn. He did not reach for a weapon. He did not call for his guards. He sat perfectly still, a king on his throne, accepting the crown of thorns that would ensure his people's crown of glory. He felt the cold metal of the destiny behind him, and he smiled a secret, holy smile. When the flash of light occurred, it wasn't a moment of darkness for him. It was the moment the origin was finally activated. Abraham's body slumped forward, but his essence did not fall. He stood up from the chair, vibrant, glowing, and free from the weight of the flesh. He watched as the room erupted into chaos. but he saw it through the eyes of eternity. He walked through the walls of the theater, stepping out onto the streets of Washington as a being of pure architectural light. He was no longer bound by time. He returned to the White House that night, not as a resident, but as the foundation. Abraham walked into the Oval Office and took his place by the window. He watched the sun rise over a country that would never be the same. He saw the years pass in a blur of light and shadow. He saw the wars, the triumphs, and the struggles of the men who would follow him. From that day forward, whenever a president sat at that desk, they felt a sudden chill, a comforting, guiding presence. They would see a tall, lanky figure in a stovepipe hat standing at the edge of their vision. Abraham was not a ghost seeking peace. He was the eternal Sentinel. He stayed because his blood had become the very mortar of the building, and his spirit was the light that kept the darkness of the other side at bay. He had become the cosmic architect of the American experiment, ensuring that the Union would not perish from the earth, but would instead be guarded by a prophet who knew the end of the story before it began. Was Abraham Lincoln a mere victim of history, or was he the one who pulled the strings of fate? At the Origin Archive, we believe that some men are born with a contract written in the stars. Lincoln didn't just lead a country. He designed a reality. He accepted the role of the Sacrificial King because he knew that for a nation to be truly reborn, its most sacred pillar had to fall. He remains the ultimate mystery because he represents the origin of American sacrifice. He was the prophet in a black suit who saw the end of the script and played his part to perfection. His phantom ship didn't take him to death. It took him to the command center of our collective destiny. Leave a comment below. Do you think Lincoln is still standing by that window today? Or has his archive expanded to something even greater? If you believe history is more than just dates and names, subscribe and turn on notifications. The past is never truly dead. It's just waiting to be rediscovered. I am your host, and this is the Origin Archive. Until next time.